Does protein quality affect our gains in the gym? Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And really, this is going to be a far more nuanced topic than I think most people realize. You know, they bring this up and they're like, oh, we got complete proteins and incomplete proteins, meaning, animal versus plant. The problem is that is an extremely outdated, very low technology idea that really isn't a thing. Okay, so in other words, that's not something that's actually real. This was stuff that had been looked at like in the 50s or the 40s or something like that. And as we've gotten more advanced in technology, we've been able to look closer at amino acids. We've been able to look closer at digestibility in the human body, absorption rates, and here's where we run into some problems. There's still research being done. So if you're looking for, exact numbers of everything, here's just an example up there. This came from a recent study from last year that I put up. So I've just got that in the background so you guys can get an idea of looking at. So they're looking at mean amino acids there. They weren't picking individual ones. You can see the different foods, kind of how they score with a plus or minus in the lab in terms of the amino acid quality and absorption and digestibility. And what you'll notice, there is a trend towards animal products being slightly better. Okay, there's absolutely a trend. But when we start getting into certain things, they find when these scores and absorption are looked at, things like whey actually absolutely devastate even other animal sources. So, people will be like, well, if I take this rice protein and it's obviously slightly less than beef, and they'll try to act like there's an enormous difference, but then the difference between, say, the beef and the rice is smaller than the difference of how much better like whey or egg whites are above that. But then with the egg whites, keeping in mind with egg protein, if it's raw, it goes way down, and when it's cooked, it goes way up. So that's on the absorption side. Okay, so you've got all of that to think about. And then if you really want to care, because people say, well, I'm trying to determine how much of the quality of my protein is. Well, here's where it also gets tricky. And is when we look at different human beings, your absorption is not going to be the same as my absorption. Our gut flora affects rates of protein absorption. Our absorption changes with age in the same person. So one of the things that's been noted when we reach middle age, we absorb less protein. So again, another thing to point out that happens with age over time. You're 40, 50 years old, you're absorbing a little less protein than you did at 20. You're not actually getting quite as much of it. So you've got those factors. Then we have a lot of medical conditions that interfere and create malabsorption problems, different types of inflammation in the gut. Different food intolerances can affect, having intolerances to specific proteins will cause these issues. And any sort of intolerance. So for example, if you're lactose intolerant and you're consuming any food with lactose in it, it's going to create some malabsorption of everything. So any medical condition that's going to affect gut inflammation or absorption could potentially reduce these things, even when they're very efficient protein sources under normal conditions. And the amount that it's reduced is really going to depend upon the food. So maybe you've got a malabsorption issue, but something that digests really quickly or easily, like whey protein or egg whites, you're going to still get a much higher load of those than maybe your beans and rice or your beef or whatever. Okay, so all of that spiel out of the way, what then do you make of it? You don't. If you were eating a very balanced diet, this is when we look at all the research on muscle growth and maximizing muscle growth and fat loss and everything else, you don't have to worry about it that much as long as your protein intakes are sufficient. Now, if you're trying to specifically do protein overfeeding, then, a lot of times you use the highest quality proteins for that. That's those studies that were done on whey. To get those results. But keep in mind, those weren't muscle growth. They were losing fat while trying to force feed. So with other stuff, on the fat loss end, generally is a malabsorption issue or lower absorption a problem for fat loss. Like in other words, man, I'm trying to lose fat, but I'm not absorbing 100% of my food as efficiently because of whatever, or maybe I'm absorbing this 5% less efficiently than this. Well, is less absorption going to interfere with losing weight? Probably not. So we come over to the muscle growth, and this is why we look at the mixed protein diets. This is why I tell people, as long as you're focused on quality protein foods, none of this is going to matter. It's not going to matter because your net total effect is still going to be all the protein you need to maximize muscle growth. So when we talk about those studies, looking at those numbers, the reason the range varies, like why did this study show a 1.2 gram per kilo of body weight and this one up to a 1.6? And okay, that's because some of them use different protein sources. Like the studies, when it shows that you still get muscle growth at like 1.5 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. So for someone like me, that's going to be in that 150 gram protein range. That will gain muscle up to that. That's accounting for there's a lot of possibly slightly lower quality protein sources. If you were only consuming really high quality protein sources, that number is probably lower. That's, again, another reason why we have a range instead of just a target number, because some of the studies showed people got maximum growth even as low as 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, so 120 grams a day. So here's kind of the take home to it. This stuff doesn't matter until your protein intakes get low. And in other words, these scores, like when someone says, man, I'm really trying to look at these scores close and apply it, well, why? It becomes practical that if you're trying to eat 100 grams only of protein a day, or that's all you're getting, and you're trying to gain muscle, yeah, knowing the quality of that protein is a big deal. It will affect your gains. Is it going to be a night and day difference? Ooh, that's a big one. Probably not. But is it going to be a measurable amount in the lab? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But when we start hitting higher intakes, like most of you out there, if you start hitting protein intakes of 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, so if you're like me and you're around 100 kilos, I'm a little under that, that 150 grams of protein, you don't need to actually think about these unless you were magically somehow getting all of it from the worst possible protein. Because you'll do that and then people say, well, okay, what if you ate no animal sources and you ate no soy or the pea protein and you only ate rice bran? Hey, okay, all right, you're right. That might be a problem on 150 grams of protein if I wanted to gain 100% of possible muscle. But nobody's doing that. Most people, even if they're eating only plant sources, are probably mixing multiple plants and different stuff, and they might have other stuff in there. Okay. And again, that only applies to vegans. Everyone else, if you're getting any higher quality stuff in there, particularly like some whey, I would go so far as to say you don't even need to worry at a certain point. For most of you out there, if you're eating enough calories to gain muscle and there's protein foods in there and you're throwing in a couple scoops of whey every day, you're probably exceeding your protein requirements for optimal muscle growth. You probably are. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.